Good morning, second grade. So today we're going to continue working on our animal projects, and today we're going to talk about habitats, and we'll talk about what those are in a minute. And after I finish teaching about habitats, you will go on Pebble Go and research your animal's habitat. So let me share my screen so we can start talking about what a habitat is. So a habitat is the natural home or environment where plants and animals live. And there's different types. So this is going to be where your animal lives. So start thinking about your animal as we go through these and think about which one you think your animal might live in. So we're going to talk about some different types, and then I will show you how to get to Pebble Go and find your animals. So our first one is the grasslands. And the grasslands is a large open area covered with natural vegetation and grass. So here in this one, you can see that there's grass and there's flowers growing. There might be things like that, but it's open. There's not a lot of trees in the grasslands, and there's a lot of grass. Hence why it's called the grasslands. So this is a picture of the grasslands. Our next one is a savanna. And a savanna is a large grassy area that has scattered with trees. So that's the difference. You'll notice in the grassland up here, there are no trees, but the savanna has a couple trees, not a lot, but one or two, maybe a couple. And this is also grass, but you'll notice the grass looks different. Savannas are usually pretty warm. And so you'll notice that the grass here isn't green, it's more of a yellow color because it's a little bit drier than the grasslands. And then we have the wetlands, which is an area of wet, swampy, marshy land. So this one has trees as well, but you'll notice that the trees are growing in water, which we don't see very often around where we live. So the trees are growing in water. You'll notice there's lily pads, which are these green things on the surface of the water. These animals usually have to be able to live in water for a lot of the time, if not all of the time. So if your animal lives in the wetlands, they're probably an animal that lives in water a lot of the time, or at least for part of their life, they will spend in the water. So that the wetlands you usually find in places, sometimes like in Florida has a lot of wetlands. Usually, a lot of times they're in warmer places, but they can be in colder places too. And then we have the desert, which is a large area that is extremely dry with very little rainfall. So animals in the desert really need to be able to survive without a lot of water. Because it doesn't rain very often in the desert, it's very dry. It gets really hot during the day and really cold at night. So your animal probably has some traits, which we'll talk about in a couple weeks, that help them survive in the desert. You'll notice some cacti. Lots of deserts have cacti, and you'll notice that the rocks in the desert kind of look like a reddish color, and that's because of what's in the soil in the desert. And there is sand in the desert as well, which we can't really see in this picture, but it's underneath all these like greenish plants. And then we have the total opposite of the desert, which is a rainforest, which is a thick, dense forest with heavy rainfall. So rainforests get a lot of rain, more rain than we get here. It rains pretty much every day in the rainforest, and they get a lot of rain every year. And because of that, it's very green, but there's lots of things grow because there's a lot of sunlight and there's a lot of water, rain, to help all these plants grow. So there's a lot of plants. It's very tight together. You can't really get through it very easily. You might need to like use a tool to get through the rainforest if you were going to go hiking through the rainforest. And it can get hot and very sticky during the day, kind of like what we feel in the summer when it's really hot. And sometimes even as you get low on the ground as you're walking, it can get a little bit dark because it's so thick, all the trees are so thick above your head that not a lot of sunlight can get through. We have the woodlands, which are what we would see around here if you left the city of Boston and you went to some of the areas around us, which are large areas of land covered with tons of trees and plants. So if you've ever gone for a hike around Boston, or you've ever driven outside of Boston and maybe you've gone to an area that has some woodlands, it's like a forest or a wooded area. So there's trees, there's grass, there's probably maybe some flowers or other different types of plants growing there. But animals that usually live in the woodlands are like squirrels and chipmunks and birds and things like that. And then we have our polar regions, which are areas where it's very cold, so not a lot grows here. And sometimes we also call this the Arctic. So this is where you're going to find your polar bears, your penguins, and there, as you see, there's water here, so there might be some animals that live in the water, like orca whales or seals. But it's very cold. It doesn't get a lot of precipitation, it looks like you might get a lot of snow in the polar regions, and they do at some points in the year, but a lot of times it's even too cold to snow. So what you're seeing that's making it white is just ice. So it's just frozen ground. And this really doesn't go away unless you go to some areas a little bit south, but most of the very tips of the polar regions are always cold and icy. Then we have the mountains, which are areas with high elevation and extremely cold temperatures. So as you probably have seen, mountains are very tall, which is what elevation means. It's how high something is. So they're tall, and a lot of times there's snow at the top, even in the summertime, because as you get further up, it gets colder and colder. And so snow can actually fall on mountains at the top during the year. I was talking to Mr. C yesterday, and he went for a hike at a mountain called Mount Wachusett out in Western Mass a little bit. And he said that there was still snow up at the top there, even though we've had some really warm days the last couple days. So even around here, some of our mountains that are here still have a little bit of snow at the top. And they're cold at the top. So some animals like mountain goats and chinchillas and things like that, they live at the top of mountains, and they are able to adapt or survive in this very cold climate. And usually it's not very flat, so they have to be really good climbers. And then we have our oceans, which I'm sure many of you have seen the ocean. We live pretty close to oceans. They're huge bodies of salt water that cover 3/4 of the Earth's surface. So most of our Earth is covered in oceans. And it probably doesn't seem like that, but if you looked at a globe or if you looked at a picture of the Earth from the sky, you would notice how much ocean there is in our world, on Earth. So maybe animals that live here would be fish or dolphins, whales, sharks, all of those types of animals. And again, it's salt water, so it's different than like a pond or the wetlands, which would be fresh water. Salt water obviously is salty. Fresh water is if you drink it, which some areas you probably shouldn't, but if you did drink it, it would taste like the water you get out of your sink. It wouldn't have any salty flavor to it. And then we have the tundra, which is a very cold, treeless region where the ground is frozen for most of the year. So the tundra is kind of up by the polar region. As you can see from here, sometimes it's at the bottom of a mountain. And there's not a lot of trees in the tundra. So like where this animal is standing here or back here where you see a little bit of snow, there's not a lot of trees. And it's frozen, the ground, they can't dig or build anything there. So not a lot of, there's not a lot of people that live in the tundra. There are some, but not a lot. And so these animals need to be able to survive in this very cold area. But as you can see, there's not a lot of snow. It's just cold all the time. And then our final vocab word isn't a type of habitat, but it is a good word to know, is environment, which is all the surroundings in which a person, plant, or animal lives. So when we talk about different environments, it's about where the person lives or plant or animal. So you might also see the word environment instead of habitat. So we just went over a lot of different habitats here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where on your poster this is going to be found. And then I'm also going to show you where you can find this on PebbleGo. So let me share our animal report now. So you started your animal report last week, most of you. You did the classification, you probably wrote in your animal name and your name, and you drew the picture of your animal. So today, what you're going to do is you're going to fill in this animal habitat. Now in this box, you can either choose, you should draw your habitat. So if my animal lived in the rainforest, I'm going to draw lots of green trees. I'm going to draw, maybe I'll draw some rain falling. Maybe I'll draw my animal in the habitat. And then somewhere over here, maybe off to the side or on the bottom or in the picture, I want to write rainforest because I want to have a word and an illustration for my habitat. So I'm going to now share PebbleGo. Hopefully. Oh, there it is. So that way we can, I can show you how to get to the habitat part. So remember our username is engaged and our password is learning. I will post that on when I post this assignment as well. Remember, you're going to go to animals, the light orange one, so it's in English, not Spanish. You're going to find your animal. So I'm going to do, I think last time I did, oops. Last time I did bears, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do a black bear. So up here at the top, you'll notice there's a tab right here that says habitat. And so I'm going to click habitat, and it's going to tell me where they live.
Black bears live mostly in forests in North America.
Okay, so it told me they live in a forest. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do forest. So forest and woodlands are very similar things. So I could either call it the woodlands or a forest. It depends on which word you want to use. So I can even see where that bear is in this picture. And if I go through all the pictures, I might see some more. So I can see that there's grass and there's some lots of trees back here, but it looks different than a rainforest because there's some space in between all the trees here. And if I look at this one, ooh, I can see some more pictures of habitat. Ooh, I can see some more grass. So these pictures all give me a really good idea of where or what to draw for my habitat. So I'm going to draw some green grass. I'm going to draw some trees. If I want to use the same color, maybe I'm going to make them white trees because it looks like a lot of these are birch trees or white trees with white bark. And then I'm going to draw my animal in its habitat. So I'm going to draw a bear in the forest, just like this picture. And then at the bottom or off to the side, I'm going to write either forest or woodlands or whatever I choose to call it. So that's your assignment for today. If you run into any problems or have any questions, send a email or a Class Dojo message to me or Miss Chim, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I hope everyone has a great Tuesday, and I will see you soon.